Hey guys, Garrett back for Sableye the Mind Sculptor with another Commander Deck Tech. I know it's been a while since I've done any of these, but you guys seem to have really liked my other ones. And I know I said I would do the Aether Revolt guys, and other than Baral, who I really loved, I have not actually liked any of them. I had started brewing with them. I came up with a couple of ideas that I liked. I might present those later if I come around to it, but they just weren't fun to me. He especially seemed promising, but I don't know. After playing with her, I really didn't like the deck that much. So anyway, we are moving on to a deck with no bearing on the current set. This is a Tim deck. So for those of you who don't know, Tim is a card named Prodigal Sorcerer, who is for 3 a 1/1 that you can tap to deal 1 damage to target creature or player. This is called Tim because of the movie Monty Python and the Quest for the Holy Grail. Just watch it if you haven't. I mean, come on. But basically, Tim has control over fire, so that's why he can deal 1 damage when he taps. That's really all there is to it. And for this deck, I actually am not going to say which commander I think is best. I personally use Keranos, God of Storms, mostly because he is one of my favorite cards of all time. But really, I also think that Niv Mizzet the Firemind or Nin the Pain Artist, for different reasons, could be a better commander of this deck. So Niv Mizzet the Firemind, of course, just power level wise, is probably the strongest commander you could have for this deck. And there's a lot of combo synergy you could build around him that would make him better than the other 2 commanders if you were going to make a very, very spiky combo deck, but you weren't worried about having a 6-mana commander. And Nin the Pain Artist has the distinct advantage of being a 2-drop that draws you cards. So she really does start generating card advantage very early on. She has a couple of cards that work very well with her that I don't have in this deck. But I would not fault you for using her in a deck like this either. I just like Keranos because he's, as I said, one of my favorite Magic cards of all time. And I love that he does a full-on bolt. Like, he kills things very, very efficiently. And he also just draws you cards really efficiently. So I love him for that reason. And I love playing with him in Modern, too, so I don't know. I have nostalgia for Keranos, God of Storms. So, moving on to our creature base, you can see how this is a Tim deck. We have a lot of Prodigal Sorcerer effects. And I'm just going to name them off. If there's anyone that I'm specifically fond of, I will explain why, but other than that, this is going to be pretty rapid fire. So first we have Cunning Spark Mage. He happens to have haste. That's his upside. Razorfin Hunter is a 2-drop, which is his big upside. Also, he is a Merfolk Goblin. You don't see a lot of those. Moving on, Vithin Stinger can be unearthed for 1 extra damage at some point. Volshock Sorcerer, again, hasty. Zurin Spellcaster, just vanilla. Thornwind Fairies happens to have flying, not very important. Gelectrode can untap whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, which is not very often in this deck. Rootwater Hunter, just vanilla. Prodigal Sorcerer, of course, the namesake card of this deck, also vanilla. Goblin Sharpshooter untaps whenever a creature dies. This can be relevant when you pile all of your Tim effects onto 1 creature. Apprentice Sorcerer is funny to me, just because of how awkwardly worded he is. Prodigal Pyromancer is vanilla but in red, which is how it should have been in the first place, but we didn't really know what blue was at the beginning, so it was basically everything. Is it Staticaster, has flash and is really good against tokens. Sukwata Firewalker has hexproof, which is kind of nice. Ben Aki Hermit is not great generally, but very, very good against attacking creatures. Juari the Earth of Flame is a little bit more expensive, but can deal X damage. Okay, so that's all of the Tim effects. The rest of the effects in this deck are kind of pseudo-Tim. They're not really Tim effects, but they are kind of like him. So Mercurial Chemister is for blue and tap it, draw 2 cards, or for red and tap it, you discard a card and it deals damage to target creature equal to the discarded card's converted mana cost. So it can either be a very strong card advantage engine, or it can be a pretty good removal spell once or twice that costs you cards. Niv Mizzet Draco Genius, the other version of Niv Mizzet. You could also run this as a commander, I guess. He's very strong as well. I like all of the Nivs. They're cool cycle of creatures. So we got Arcanus the Omnipotent, very, very good card advantage creature. also protects himself very well. This is just a fun guy in general. Tandem Lookout, which can soul bond to a creature, and notice it does not say whenever a creature deals combat damage, so your pingers become ping and draw a card if you're dealing damage to an opponent. Apprentice Wizard is in here for ramp. Also, I think he's funny. You might notice that theme throughout my commander deck. A lot of cards are in here because I think they're funny. Exuberant Firestroker, not so good with some of the alternative commanders. I'd definitely take him out if your commander doesn't have 5 or more power, because nobody else in this deck does. Cracklebur, both a Tim and an untap mechanic, so he's very strong as long as you have the mana to use him. Viashino Heretic. I don't have a ton of artifact hate in this deck, so I figured I'd put one of the stronger artifact hate cards in. Aladdin, same reasoning as Viashino Heretic. And our last creature is a Willbreaker. So Willbreaker, honestly, I wouldn't expect it to live very long, but it is very funny while it is alive because your Tims just tap and the creature they hit becomes yours, which is hilarious if you have 3 or 4 of them out. So moving on to our ramp package, we got Izzet Signet, Pristine Talisman, and Soul Ring, along with Fire Diamond and Sky Diamond. This is probably a little bit light and a little bit bad, depending on how much money you want to put into it. Of course, ramp packages can be much better. Yeah, not much more to say about that. We also have Swiftfoot Boots and Lightning Greaves. These should be in most commander decks. I don't have really the discipline to put them in all of my commander decks, if I'm being honest. But they're so good in Tim decks that I had to put them in this time. So next we have Curiosity and Ophidian Eye. Both of these say whenever the enchanted creature deals damage to an opponent, you draw a card. So they're a very good way for your Tims to become draw mechanics as well. So moving on to our next section of cards, we have cards that make your Tims better. So these are cards that either make the effect better or they'll let you use your Tim multiple times or something like that. So first we've got Thornbite Staff, which it makes the creature into a Tim if it isn't already. So equipped creature has 2 tap. This creature deals 1 damage to target creature or player. But it also gives it this cool ability that says whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, untap this creature. So this lets you really go off on a board full of 1/1s. Not much else to say about that. Illusionist's Bracers lets you double up your Tim effect for 1 creature. And depending on the creature, it can be worth a lot more. For instance, Arcanist the Omnipotent lets you double your card draw. Freed from the Real. 1 blue to untap your Tim is very strong. You can just sit there and untap your Tim and go off with that. Deals a ton of damage over time. Preman's Aura, same deal as Freed from the Real in this case, except it can also give hexproof. Intruder Alarm is good because you can use your whole board of Tims, then play 1 creature, untap them all, and hit them again. Also note that this works for opponents' creatures, so if they plan on playing a creature with toughness, less than the number of Tims you have, you can just eat it. Then we have Dramatic Reversal for those times when you really just need to use all your Tims one more time. Paradox Engine, because Paradox Engine. And Breaking Wave, because I think it's really amusing, the idea of a normal aggressive deck untapping on turn 6, and you play this on their untap step, and then shoot down all their creatures. That just amuses me a lot. So then we got Quest for the Pure Flame, which will very quickly end up letting all of your creatures do double damage for 1 turn. Talon of Pain, which, because all of your creatures do 1 damage, basically ends up doubling the amount of damage your Tims can do. Sigil of Sleep, which you put on your creature and it lets it deal damage to the player and then bounce a dude to their hand. Arm with Ether, which is like a Sigil of Sleep for 1 turn for all of your creatures. Cowardice, which makes Tims into bounce effects. And Dismiss into Dreams, which makes Tims into destroy effects. So Dismiss is a little bit more expensive, but it really, really is good once you have it landed. So we also have Charisma, which lets one of your Tims steal creatures. Nekote, I don't know, I speak Chinese, not Japanese, which lets the equipped creature tap down creatures basically forever, as long as Nekote is on the battlefield. Repercussion, which lets your timbs do damage to both the creatures and the face. I'm kind of iffy about this one because it makes blocking a lot harder as well. Fractured Loyalty, which lets you steal one creature really, really well. And Sword of Cauldron, which lets your timbs exile things. And our last spell is, of course, a single copy of Counterspell. You gotta have one in there, right? It's a blue deck. So I've probably missed a few cards because there are a lot of cards in a commander deck. I'm not going to tell you guys how to do your mana. I've seen someone fetch from Original Duel and use it to play a 1/1 for 1 with Death Touch. People don't think logically when they're making their commander land bases. They just use whatever they have, and I definitely encourage you to do that. Short of that, I love Pain lands and comes into play tapped lands. They're fine in Commander. You're not really falling that far behind as long as your playgroup is pretty casual. The only land I would suggest for this deck is a single copy of Desert, which is a land that's also a Tim, which is really funny to me. So definitely have Desert in your deck. So that's the deck. I've had fun just messing around with this deck a little bit, testing it out on Xmage. I'm definitely thinking of actually purchasing this in paper and using it in my playgroup, as it turned out to be pretty budget after I ran all of the numbers. So I hope you guys like the deck. Stay tuned for more because I had fun making this. Other than that, peace out.